Well, good morning, everybody. It's really great to be here. I'm actually here with my friend Scott Vance. We go to the same church together, and I'm excited because we're going to be talking about Joseph today. And yesterday we talked about Abraham and just the faithful steps that he made because he really believed the promises from who gave them. He believed the promises of God wholeheartedly, and really because of that, we are still benefiting from that promise because out of the line of Abraham, like I shared yesterday, we had Jesus come, who was the fulfillment, the ultimate fulfillment to that promise that he gave to Abraham 4,000 years ago. And I'm excited today because we're going to talk about Joseph, who is an amazing and huge figure in the Old Testament. And the topic of today is by faith we hold on. So I'm excited to have Scott on today. Scott, I wanted to ask you, what inspires you the most about this character, Joseph, in the Bible?
Hey, Aaron, great to be here with you this morning. And Joseph is just an unbelievable man of resilient faith. So much that we can learn from him. And when I think about him and you read about him in Hebrews and Genesis, it is amazing how he was just so radically, because of his resilient faith and holding on to God, he was radically transformed. I mean, when you think about it, he starts out when we're first introduced to him, he is talking about a dream that he had where he is going to be superior to all his brothers, his other 11 brothers, and even his mom and dad, which was just unheard of to say something like that during that time. And he actually says he's going to be greater than all peoples. The sun and the moon and the stars are going to bow down to him. But we see him, once he's unfortunately sold into slavery by his loving brothers, he is radically transformed. And what stands out is that happens because of his deep relationship with God. He has so much time while he's in slavery to spend time with God. We see that come out in a point where he is tempted by Potiphar's wife, and he could have said all kinds of different stuff, but what he says is, I do not want to sin against God. And that just really jumped off the pages to me about, man, this guy walks deeply with God. He really cares about God. We see that he does not ever or consistently say bitter. He could have been so bitter, but he works and he wrestles in his relationship with God, and he's not bitter. He's not distracted. He's not drifting and going after the wealth of all of Egypt that he eventually, is exposed to. I see him as an unbelievable man and transformed in the area of his character, which talks about his deep relationship with God and being hardworking and full of integrity. Any role he's in, when he's in slavery, he gets elevated to one of the top roles of leadership. And then lastly, you just look at, he becomes, a guy who's pretty insensitive and uncaring about people and their feelings with what he shares about the dream, to where he's unbelievably caring and compassionate. When he finally gets to meet his dad and his brothers, he's literally weeping and beside himself. And God uses his caring and compassionate heart to be the person who literally saves the entire world from a severe famine. So those are some things that just really inspire me about Joseph's really resilient faith.
No, that's awesome.
So how about you, Aaron? What do you see?
Well, first of all, thank you, Scott. If you haven't read the last, 15, 20 chapters of Genesis, Scott just summed it up in about 2 minutes. I think that was a world record. What inspires me? Well, I've been studying in Hebrews and taking people through this study in Hebrews as we learn about what others and what the ancients were commended for of their faith. And it comes to Joseph. In Hebrews 11, verse 22, one of the things it says is, by faith, Joseph, when his end was near, he spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions concerning the burial of his bones. Yeah. And when you look back at that time when he spoke about this, the thing that inspires me is when he says it in verse Exodus chapter 50, verse 24. It says, Joseph said to his brothers, I'm about to die, but God will surely come to your aid and take you up out of this land. And he says, to the land he promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Joseph made the Israelites swear an oath and said, God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up from this place. And then when you continue to read, like in Exodus 12, it tells us that they had been enslaved in Egypt for 400 years. So Joseph was talking about something by faith that would not happen for another 400 years. And it was because he was holding on to this promise that God gave him. And he was like, hey, I want you to take my bones to the land that God has promised me. He was looking forward to something bigger than just himself. And it just is so inspiring. And you really don't get actually the fulfillment of that whole thing until Joshua, when they decide to bury his bones. And it's just, they kept that wish for him. And it was just this faithful promise that was lived out, this faithful statement that Joseph said. And one of the things that I'm learning through this study in faith is that when God says he's going to do something, he does it.
Yeah.
And the thing is he just doesn't always work on our timeline.
Yeah.
And I really believe it just takes so much faith to hold on to the promises of God. So even at Joseph's end, he was still holding on to the promise that God was going to fulfill, that he had promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Said, hey, I don't want my bones to rest here. I'm leaving, but my bones, I want them in the promised land. And to me, what a faithful statement that he made there. And Scott, I know you've been a Christian for a long time, and I'm not going to mention how old you are, but you've been a Christian for about as long as I've been alive, maybe a couple years shy of that.
35
but,
years.
There we go. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you, how have you seen faith like this? This faith that causes you to hold on in your life. How have you seen that personally in your life?
Yeah, and I think you said it so well, just the whole idea of, timing, God's timing versus our timing. We want instant satisfaction, instant gratification. We think about things as hours and weeks and maybe months or a year, but I think God thinks more in terms of decades, 10 years, right? When you look at the way he worked in different people's lives. But I know for me personally, and I think about passages like Matthew 6:33, seek God and his righteousness, seek the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be done for you as well. And, passages like draw near to me and I will draw near to you. And those are the ones that really speak to me about this resilient faith personally in my life. I know for me, many of people know my story, but, 25 years ago, Tara and I, we were converted 35 years ago. I was in the Indianapolis church, Tara, 37 years ago. But
37 for Tara? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
37. Don't tell her.
Yes. Yeah. And but at that point, we had been in leadership there and been in the ministry full time, but and we were out at that time, but we were asked to move to Los Angeles to really to connect the church in Indianapolis to the church in Los Angeles. And wow. we decided to do that, and we moved here without a job, without really knowing where we were going to live. And God just really blessed that, in this idea of seeking his kingdom and his righteousness. In addition to that, what really personally helped me was that period of time. I was about 10 years old as a Christian, and I was just really struggling with my relationship with God and sense of understanding grace. I was really a guilty soul, someone who I got to the point where I felt so guilty all the time, and like I had to perform so much, and I had so little connection with God's love and grace that it became very hard for me to read my Bible just because I felt constantly accused. Now, God wasn't doing any of that. I knew that intellectually, but I just didn't feel it and emotionally couldn't attach to it. But what I found in coming here, what it gave me a chance to do was just really connect with God in a way I never had before. And I finally started bringing the real me, who I really was, what was really going on, how I was really feeling, to the real God. Wow. And it made God so much more real to me, because then he could really minister to me and help me to see who he really was, and to reach into my heart and mind through passages, through talks with other people, through prayer times, to really see him as the true, graceful, loving God that he is. And it's been, when you think about time, I wish that would have changed right away.
Yeah.
I was really hurting and suffering during that time, but I never quit. I never gave up. I stayed faithful to everything. I stayed faithful to my quiet times. I really held on, and God really blessed me for that. It's been a 25-year journey in doing that, but after 25 years, I just see that now I am so different, so changed, so close to God that I never believed that was even possible. So I just see that promise of God. If you draw near to him, he will draw near to you, really being true. And I'm so grateful for that promise. How
Oh,
about you? How does it personally help you?
well, I can tell you, holding on to his promises, I've been a disciple for a decade.
Yeah.
And so I'm 37 years old, and I grew up going to church, and I've shared this with many people. Grew up going to church, but I didn't really make a conscious decision to really radically change the way I was going to live until I was 26 years old, and at that point, I had to make some relationship changes. I had to move. Also, I didn't move. I moved within the city, but I was in a situation that just wasn't good. It wasn't honoring God. I was in a relationship that wasn't honoring God. I was in a job that really my life was more about my work than anything else, and I felt like I lacked meaning. And I remember when I studied out the Bible, I remember reading Matthew 28 and about Jesus pulling all his disciples and saying, "All authority has been given to me. Go make disciples of all nations." And I was always a man in search of purpose,
Yeah.
and that gave me purpose.
Hmm.
I didn't go into the ministry until 2 years after that, and I haven't looked back since. But I remember, and I constantly go back to that scripture for my own life, because I'm like, wow, this is what I feel like my personal calling is for God, just to go make disciples, to spread the gospel, to help other people draw closer to God in whatever form that looks like. And so, and really, God's taking care of us through that. And, through making some of those decisions, God blessed me with a beautiful wife, a beautiful family. I
Yeah.
have I have friendships with so many different people that I never thought I'd have friendships with, and I've just felt God really take care of me. Um, but I know that it's a constant process. I'm gonna be talking tomorrow about the maturing that
Hmm.
comes with faith, but it's a choice that you have to make. And so I appreciate what you sharing here, how you guys chose to move, and how God blessed that, and how He worked on that through you guys and through your lives, and how you've been able to use some of the things that you've learned. I love it. The real me drew closer to God,
Yeah.
or as I let the real me come out, I drew closer to God, and I really got to know the real God. And it takes a lot of faith to let the real you actually show. And so, now, Scott, thank you so much for sharing just about your journey, what inspires you about Joseph. I've been really looking forward to our Quiet Time series, By Faith. This was day 5 of our study by faith. And, I hope, Scott, that you're enjoying it. Everybody else that's listening, I hope that you're enjoying it. Make sure you guys check out our YouTube channel. You can subscribe. The button's going to be right here at the end of the video. And then, hopefully you have a good day, and don't forget to share it with your friends. Have a great day. Love you guys. Thank you, Scott. Have a good day.
Thanks, Aaron.